Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. So happy to have each and every one of you back here today, and I'm very excited to have my guest with us to share her story. We've got Aiste Stanley, an agency owner and luxury travel advisor of Trabeona Travels. Aiste, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here.
First question I'm going to ask you is, did I pronounce everything more or less correct?
Yes, you're very, very advanced in all the pronunciations of my name and my company name.
Well, if you go back and listen to some past episodes, you'll notice that sometimes I stumble, which is why before I hit the record button, we had a conversation, and you helped me with the company name by kind of explaining the meaning behind it. And I thought that was a really good place to start. So Trabeona, where does that name come from? How did you land on that name? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, thank you so much. That's a really great question. And my biggest goal when I started the company 9 years ago was to create meaningful journeys for my clients. And I believe that started with the name of the company and giving meaning, to the business. I didn't want to call it Aiste Travel, Delaware Vacation something. Very important for me to, give meaning. And Abiona, so the company name is Trabeona Travels, and Abiona is a Roman goddess that oversees people leaving their homes. So whether it's a child, taken off to college, or a traveler going overseas to explore the world. And I thought that was very fitting because that's what I truly do, is oversee my clients and help them explore the world and make sure they have a safe passage and a safe journey. And I added TR for travel, and that's how Trabeona Travels was born.
Very cool. Did it ever occur to you to go actually officially change your first name? You could just be Abiona?
So people call me Trabeona sometimes. I'll have suppliers email me, "Good morning, Trabeona."
Maybe they think it's easier than Aiste. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant name. I love it. And I'm curious, have there been moments where you wish you'd picked something different? Not that I think you should have. This is not a criticism or advice or anything. It's just, have you had moments where you thought, geez, maybe I should have picked something that people could remember a little easier or actually pronounce? Or are you just full on board, happy with what you did and no regrets?
So I'm overall very happy because I do have a distinction with my personal name and the business name.
Yes.
When clients talk about their travel advisor and they say, "Aiste plans my trips," how many more Aistes are there, especially in Delaware? I'm confidently can say probably zero. So it's like marketing within itself, My travel advisor is also Aiste, and it's great for people to remember me by that name. And same with the Trabeona Travels. The only time I ever regret it is when I have to spell my email address to, the suppliers when I'm booking. That's, an adventure in itself. That's the only time, but that's just an admin,
I get it completely. And I know obviously you and I have communicated by email, but I'm not at the moment. Do you use your first name and your business name in your email address?
Yeah, so it's Aiste at Trabeona.
So you have to spell out the whole thing. All right.
That's the only time that I'm like, I should have picked something a little easier.
For those of the listeners that just clicked play without reading the show notes or without noticing how her name is spelled, first name is Aiste, just to kind of put it into perspective why we're having this conversation about spellings and all that stuff. So, all right, very cool. So now that we've dug into your naming and your name and all that stuff, let's discuss what Trabeona Travels, what you do. Obviously, you're, travel advisor. Some people think they know what that means, but not all travel advisors dabble in the same type of travel. So I want to get into kind of, before we get into your background and why you ended up doing what you're doing, we're just going to explain to our listeners, kind of what's your specialty, what's your niche, and what gets you excited.
Sure, definitely. And it's great, there's so many travel advisors in the United States and all over the world. And I think most of us have a niche and most of us do something that we're passionate about. And we work on different types of trips, which then helps the client, to make sure they find the right advisor to help them. So Trabeona Travels, our purpose is to help people see the world in the most meaningful and authentic ways. And that's done through cultural connections, through immersive learning experiences, and scenic discoveries. So anything from a cooking class with an Italian nonna to hiking Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa to, expedition cruises in Antarctica. I think the key and the biggest key is meaningful and authentic type of travel that brings you home rejuvenated, well-rested, educated. We learn a lot through travel. We connect with the rest of the world. We learn that the world is actually, a great place and people by nature are kind and helpful. And so that's the biggest, goal of the business that we run. And we do different types of travel because, some clients may want to see the world by train. Others love small ship luxury cruising, river cruising. Different types of individual itineraries where we plan everything super geared just to that traveler and their family or whoever they're going with. So a lot of different ways to travel, but the main theme is to see the world in the most meaningful way.
You just explained why I invited you to come on the show because what I heard, and I think what the listeners hear, there are travel advisors that specialize in big ship cruises, resort hotels, and I'm not knocking anything. I think that if people are getting out there doing stuff, that's good. Maybe the first trip is a Cancun resort hotel or something like that, but then maybe they want to connect a little bit more and they so maybe that's a gateway drug to travel for some people. I don't know. I'm not knocking it, but it's the authenticity and just what you just described is exactly why after you and I spoke a few weeks ago, I was like, yeah, we need to come back on and have a conversation. So thank you for doing that.
Awesome.
And the very first question I used all that to preface my first question. Do you find yourself in I'm not even sure how to ask the question. I'll ask it and then you can tell me how I should have asked it. But I guess the question is, if you're completely dependent on working as a travel advisor, I suspect every once in a while people come across you and call you and say, hey, can you help us book a Caribbean cruise or something like that? Or maybe you have past guests that come back and say they want to take their grandkids on a Disney cruise or something like that. So I guess where I'm going with the question is, do you do it? And I would expect that you would, but I don't know. You can answer the question, I guess. And then number two is it painful?
It is painful in the sense that I am not passionate about certain types of travel, and that makes it less exciting to plan for me. And I think it does not do justice for the client as well when you're working with someone who's not passionate about Disney, let's say, or the Caribbean, large, loud resorts with a lot of fun and theme park, water parks and things like that. So because I've been doing this for a long time, I've solved the problem to where I'm happy planning the trips that I love planning. And my clients are happy working with advisors that are passionate about Disney, passionate about the Caribbean, or all those types of trips that I personally don't plan. So I do have a team of 7 advisors currently and actually 2 more onboarding, and we are specialized. So as an agency, we are able to service any type of requests because I don't want my client who, goes to Europe every year and wants to do a family reunion in Mexico to go to another agent, to another agency. And I am knowledgeable, but like I said, I'd rather have them work with someone who's really passionate about that product and give them everything and more to make it perfect. Because I do that in Europe. I do that on expeditions, type of journeys. And so we're very specialized, which is very helpful to make sure every client gets, the best experience.
That's very cool. And I suspect, well, I guess the way to say that, you keep it in-house. But,
yes.
But maybe you don't do it. Maybe someone on your team
right.
that enjoys that type of thing. And if you set aside your own interests and passions or whatever, is it easier to do like a resort hotel or a cruise ship than it is what you tend to spend your time doing? I would guess it is, but I don't know.
I think the easiest thing is when you know one area really well. So whether it's Europe, for me, I know it really well, or whether it's Mexico resorts, let's say, or the Caribbean resorts that you've visited many times, the brands really well. When someone comes to you and asks you for, a family reunion, and the resort must have these things, because you do it so often, it will take you a few minutes to pull a quote together.
That
because
makes sense.
Yes. And, the same for me, if someone comes to me and want to go to Italy, I mean, it's just seconds for me to tell them, to have a good conversation and pick through the client's wish list and put that together. So I think being a specialist, an expert in a region or a country, that's what really makes it easier to work on different requests.
So it's easier if you know it, basically is what I heard. Is if you know it, if it's kind of your bread and butter, then that makes it easier, as opposed to, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
I'm really fascinated by this, and I hope you'll bear with me. Hopefully our listeners are as well.
Yeah, of course.
But so, because you've got a team, and you mentioned specifically that you had a couple people onboarding. I don't want to discuss the specifics of, well, maybe we'll discuss the specifics of your team, whatever. But I guess the question is, there's a lot of, you look at social media, you see a lot of, be a travel advisor, no experience necessary, just, just apply here. And I honestly, I just want to kind of ask you a little bit about how that business works, because I worked in real estate for a while. And when I got my real estate license, it was like, it wasn't hard to find a job. I mean, any broker would take you on because you only got paid if you sold something, number one.
Right.
Number two, the expectation was that your clients, your first clients, and maybe a lot of your clients are friends, family, people in your social networks. So it's like, so if they bring you on and help you with the paperwork or whatever to be legal and maybe teach you a little bit on how to write a contract, they didn't necessarily have a lot of skin in the game. It was like, okay, now go talk to your parents, your siblings, your everybody that you know, and tell them you're a real estate agent. I went a little too far into that. How does it work, and why do I see so many postings on social media? Come be a travel advisor, travel the world, get discounts, all this stuff. What insight can you give us? Because I know you have a team. So you recruit people. So you know more about it than probably a lot.
It's a great question. Yes. And it's a great topic to bring up in general, because life is not that easy to where you just become a travel advisor and start traveling the world for free.
Yeah.
It sounds great. And I do it
really good,
after 9 years of, busting it. But it's not that easy. And when we are a small team for a reason, I believe in quality over quantity. And it goes all the way around. Same, with clients, with suppliers, with anyone I work with. I believe in high quality of work, high quality of the relationship that we have, and things like that. So the team is small for a reason. The goal of the agency and of our business is to help clients see the world, not to travel for free, not to have a flexible schedule and work 3 hours a week. All that sounds great. And it once you're established, it truly is a very rewarding job. But to get there takes a lot of work, because we do work on the commissions. Primarily, advisors at Trabeona Travels, we do charge fees up front in addition to that to be able for that quality time for our client, to secure the time to work with them exclusively and not just be picking up the phone, taking any order, all orders, and, just flipping through the book, it's very, very important for me. So what I'm trying to say, when I am adding team members, we do have multiple conversations in terms of how they're envisioning their job. Why are they wanting to be a travel advisor? If it's to travel the world for free, it's the wrong reason, because it's not easy, you know. We do run into issues and we do have to solve problems. And if you're not loving your job, you're not gonna be happy. The clients won't be happy. You know, primary purpose is to determine why you want to be a travel advisor. How do you envision your day to day? How much can you work? You know, is this a part-time career for you, a retirement career? Is this a full-time, you know, where you just want to be the top of the top? And just having those conversations really helps me then communicate what type of agency we are. You know, my clients have access to me, you know, Monday through Friday, and they know that I'm a full-time advisor. I travel the world to experience different things that then I can come back and sell it and offer it to my clients. And, you know, just setting those expectations, I think, is key all the way around. So hopefully that answered your question.
It does. And as I was listening to it, I was realizing pretty much anybody that is considering joining your team from here on out after we publish this episode is probably going to listen to this conversation, because I assume they're going to want to learn more about you, more about the agency, and they're going to listen to this. So then it's like, okay, so is this going to help filter out some people that are not right? Or is it just,
I hope so.
Is it just going to prepare them to know what to say when you ask those questions?
No, I think, you know, just having a deep conversation, you can filter things out. And when I say I hope so, I mean it in a way to where I don't want to waste anyone's time either, you know, because I have certain expectations. And when you do sign up with the agency, you know, those expectations are there. So why waste I don't want to waste anyone's time either if that's not what they want to do. Because there are other ways to set up, you know, they can go directly to a host agency and sell 2 trips a year, you know.
Just try and figure it out on their own is what I was hearing you say.
And that's exactly it. You won't have a close mentor, systems in place, and different types of support that we offer.
To say this, but it sounds a lot like how real estate sales work. And I know some people, well, I don't like real estate agents, so therefore. But they don't like real estate agents maybe because they had too many people knock on their door over the last 20 years and they didn't want to sell their house. And every few days someone knock on the door and say, you want to sell your house. But other than that, let's set that aside. It sounds like a similar model. And I remember it was, you know, when I did recruiting for the team for a while, and people, you know, say, well, why do you want to do this kind of work? Why do you want to be a real estate agent? Well, I love houses. And I'm like, oh, that's the wrong answer.
Right.
Because it's not about the houses, it's about the people. And generally people that like things don't necessarily, you know, if houses are your favorite thing, it probably means people are a couple steps below that. Just, you know, that's a story in my head. So I hear you say, if your idea is I want to travel, then that's kind of the same thing, you know, or it's similar. And are there a couple others? You mentioned kind of flexibility. I imagine a lot of maybe people that are caregivers that have children in the home that don't want to leave the home and think, oh, maybe being a travel agent's a good job. Are those the top 2 things? I want to travel and I want to be able to stay home with family and work. Are those the top 2, or is there something else in there?
I would say yes, like be my own boss, work as much as I want, just that type of flexibility. And these are legitimate perks of being a travel advisor, but they shouldn't be the goal on why you're choosing to be a travel advisor, because you can be a real estate agent, to your point, and have the flexibility and only work on Fridays or whatever, you know, your schedule offers. I'm not sure.
You say that, but as somebody who formerly worked in that, it was like horrible fit for me. It was like gouging my eyeballs out with ice picks. I love the people part. But anyway, there definitely, you know, there was a lot of idea, oh, I can work when I want. Yeah, no. Well, you can if you only want to do 2 deals a year. And, you know, when your license expires, you're like, well, there's no point in renewing it. But because there's always there's reality, and then there's doesn't this look like a sexy thing? You know, all real estate agents have nice cars. They work whenever they want and da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And they don't realize that when you are getting ready to walk out the door on a Friday night to go have a dinner date with your partner, and somebody calls and says, oh my gosh, this is the house. We got to look at it tomorrow. And oh, by the way, here's 3 others that we got to look at tomorrow morning, or we want to make an offer. And it's really hard to have a personal life. or at least manage those boundaries. You said you work Monday through Friday. I thought that's pretty cool. Does that mean you don't do anything on Saturday and Sunday? Or let's put the reality, like what is your reality? And is that because you've been doing it long enough and you have a team?
A lot of different things are coming together at this point. In general, I'm a huge believer of boundaries in personal life, work life, whatever life you have. Call me if you need a little talk.
Then you and I, after we're done recording this, we're going to have a talk because I am not, boundaries are, what is a boundary?
I'm huge on it. And it's so important when you're running your own business to have those boundaries, or you will be working 24/7.
Yeah.
You will be working on weekends, and then you're miserable because you have no time for hobbies, no time for rest, no time for family and friends, and it's just chaos. So when I say I work, my clients.
Before you go on, is that something you learned over the last several years? When you started out, was it like that where you were just working all the time? And I'm just curious, or were you good with that right off the beginning?
It's definitely a process. As the business grows too, you get different types of boundaries that need to be in place. When you're just starting off and you're taking any, requests you can take and learning, and I call it an internship phase, you're kind of all over and you're open and take and try different types of requests and travel styles and things like that. But once you're starting to settle in, you have to determine how much, like I said, how much you want to work, because it can be a profitable part-time position. It doesn't have to be a 40-hour or more a week type of thing. I think since birth, I've been with, boundary type of person. I'm from Europe, Northern Europe, where people are a lot more serious and rigid with rules and expectations. So I think it's engraved in me culturally. If it's not an emergency, it can wait. It truly can, Will we solve the problem if I answer to you at 10 p.m.? It will probably...
For a trip that's coming up in 4 months.
5 months. Or can I wait till tomorrow and have a clear head, again, benefit to you as a client, a clear head, high energy, great response to versus talking about it at 10 p.m. when I'm exhausted, and it's just not fair to anyone.
I think that it's really important, and that was actually kind of the follow-up question I was thinking about was, what is the benefit to the client? Because if a client hears, I only work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, some clients might think, oh, you're not very available.
Right. And that's
reality. Okay, yeah. So what's the benefit to them with the way, because here's, I'll throw out what's coming to my mind and you can help clarify it. But I'm thinking, okay, I can work with somebody that's a true professional that shows up with high energy and very focused on what they're doing. Or I can maybe try and book through some company where if I want to talk to somebody on a Saturday afternoon, I can, but it's going to be someone I've never talked to before, because that's exactly how they do it. And maybe you've got your primary advisor, but every time you pick up the phone, you're talking to somebody else, and that can be good. That's called leverage. That can be a good thing. But from a client perspective, I think I'd rather have somebody that I can connect with fully, that's really invested in what I'm doing, than just kind of luck of the draw. I'm dialing an 800 number, see who picks up, and I try and explain everything, and they look in the notes. Well, I don't see that here in the notes. Is that the reality?
So, that is really the strong suit of our business, is being a boutique travel advisory and high touch. When I say boundaries, I don't mean I'm going to ignore a client that's having a stressful meltdown over not finding their travel documents, even though they're traveling in 2 weeks. If I sense someone being upset, obviously I'm not going to, say I'm not working. Emergencies, that type of situations, you have to be available, in this position. And that's when I say these are the hard times, when you have to be available in the middle of the night. Once I had a group of 80 with canceled flights all in one night. I'm not going to say it's a Saturday night and I am, spending time with my husband and my kids. So there's always an exception, and customer first, client first, unless they're being disrespectful of your personal time over things that can wait.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, all my clients, our clients in general, they're very, very nice and respectful. I think because we're so close on a personal level, and we work so closely and they know you and you know them, to where there is a mutual respect and they know you're off on weekends. They learn that, and they're okay waiting. If someone is if they really need that high touch, like you say, I need to call someone on a Saturday morning and I don't care who answers the phone, I just need an answer. That's great, but it's not going to be us. I'm okay with that because it's not fair to you and it's not fair to me. It's just not going to work. So I think that's the boundary I'm talking about, is figuring out the relationship before you even have it. Is this going to work? Am I going to help you, most importantly? And then does my, work style, does that suit you? Because it is a small agency and there is a wait, for me to answer your questions, unless it's an urgent question, of course.
Right. We can use the word boundaries, or it sounds like we could use the word expectations or fit. Are we a good fit for each other? Because if you're not a good fit, I learned that I keep speaking about real estate. It wasn't the most exciting time of my life, but yeah, you learn that, like, set the expectations. It's kind of why you and I did a call, a few weeks ago. Like, we're just not going to show up and hope it goes well.
Right.
And, we sit down and, okay, can we, is it a good fit? We're going to, here's what's going to happen. We're going to go through this process. We're going to come back. You're going to have your lighting and sound sorted out. I'm going to have mine sorted out, and we're going to chat.
And we click, we can have a conversation. And you want to click with your client. And for the client, for, any listeners that are on the client side, you want to click with your travel advisor big time.
It's,
so you can get that perfect service, perfect, itinerary planning and on-trip support. And, I'm checking in with my clients when they travel as well, and it's just, we are in high communication. But when I say boundaries, when I am done with work, and some days it's at 2 p.m., some days it's at 7 p.m. There is no office hours, rigid office hours. When I'm done, I'm done. I'm going to enjoy my life. So when I come back tomorrow, I'm excited and thrilled to open my emails. That's the state that I want to be in,
And I think anybody, even your clients, presumably, they're going on trips that are probably not cheap. They have jobs.
Right, exactly.
They understand that when they respond to a text message at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, they know they're not like fully invested in it. Maybe they're 3 glasses of wine in, and I'm not suggesting that's what you're doing on Friday night, but you know what I mean? You just know that your answers are shorter, just not quite as helpful.
Right. It's not valuable to anyone. And, when you said people don't like real estate agents, so there is the mixed rep for travel advisors as well, because not everyone treats it as a professional business. Some you'll see using Gmail address, not having a website. And then when you come to a professional agency with, hundreds of Google reviews, with great reputation, lots of testimonials, professional email address, this is a business. It's not a hobby.
I know.
It overlays a bit to me personally because I love travel and I love planning. I'm this organization planner, crazy person. That's truly my strength. So it aligns with my profession, but it is a business. The biggest compliment I've ever gotten from someone is that they thought I worked for a large agency, for like a big business, and they didn't know it was a small boutique agency, with just a few advisors and just kind of me leading it. So it was a big compliment to me because I want to come across as, and we are, an established business, with different types of services and travel. And it is not a hobby. And we are here to support our clients and then, of course, build, professional relationships with the industry. So we have excellent guides and drivers and interesting excursions and interesting, unique properties and things like that.
Yeah, I get it. And however, if your email address ended in gmail.com, you wouldn't have to spell it out as often.
That's true. So maybe I'll have to switch.
Maybe you should. But I think the trade-off is maybe that's why they're doing that. Maybe their company name's really long and they just decide, I don't know. But no, I hear what you're saying, and I know our listeners hear what you're saying. And it reminds me of when I was in an industry. I'm not going to say, it's the same industry I've mentioned a few times.
Right.
I don't know why I see the connection, but I remember colleagues, if they were struggling or had a bad day or a bad month, they would talk about, well, I guess I need to go get a real job now. And that was,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, and anybody that kind of knew what was going on, especially the team leader, like, well, if you treated this like a real job,
That's exactly my point. Yes, it is a real job. I come from a corporate background, and maybe that really helped me continue in that mindset. Business to business, you run it, and pay attention to your sales, your marketing, your bottom line, your softwares and systems. That's the only way you're going to grow and build credibility with clients that you want to attract and help.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I think we've created a video training workshop for anybody that wants points and tips on, what they should know before they go into real estate, into either real estate,
or becoming a travel advisor.
Probably the same tips in a lot of ways, other than the travel advisor is a lot sexier, I think.
It's a lot of fun. It truly is. I don't want to make it look like we work really hard. We work hard and then we truly play hard. It's a really great job.
But you're also, from my, I've worked in the tourism business. I mentioned real estate, but that was just a short period of my life that left a mark, a few bruises and scars. But most of my life has been in the travel and tourism business, and it's pretty damn cool that we're helping people have experiences. We're helping put together experiences for people with maybe parents that they've never traveled with, parents that have never been out of the country and their adult kid takes them on a safari in Africa, or the other way around. Either way, it's like these are really important things and really cool things that we get to, even if we're not on the trip with them. It's pretty darn cool.
It's like you want to. When I put a trip together, it's so incredible to me that I want to come along. And I joke sometimes, I'm like, you're going to meet me at the airport, But another really cool thing, when you're talking about bringing people together through travel, one of the big things we do as well in our business is working on the corporate incentive travel. So it's not the, business trips from Texas to Chicago and a plane ticket and a car rental, which to me is really boring. Personally, nothing against it. But creating, a group of 150 employees traveling together and maybe doing that cooking class, together, or some sort of a team bonding activity, and then hanging out. And same with, leadership retreats, working on strategy in an incredible place versus, in your office, in the conference room, right here at work where you work, locally. So bringing people together on different levels is not just family and friends. It can be coworkers. It can be really anything, different types of, golfers. Different types of hobbyists and activities. I'm passionate about groups. Groups is one of my favorites. So
really? Okay.
I wanted to, highlight that. I love working with groups, and the more complicated, the better. It's like I told you, I'm crazy with.
Have you figured out, here's why I'm going to ask this. I'll tell you why I'm going to ask this first. Is I remember, I started out, my first job in tourism, I was 12 years old. My dad was a balloon pilot.
Oh my God.
And we would travel the country in the summers. And my job was every weekend we were in a different town for some sort of balloon festival. And my job, I had a T-shirt that said, "Ask me about balloon rides." And I would walk around the field, the launch field. Balloon rides, anybody want a balloon ride? And my job was to go find people that wanted a balloon ride. I would find them, and I would walk them over to where my dad was, and he would handle the, he was the closer.
Right.
My job was prospecting, so I was a prospector in the tourism business at 12. So anyway, where I'm going with that is I worked at tourism stuff most of my life. And at one point I had an opportunity to go through some exercises about, figuring out what your values are, that type of thing. Most of us have been through workshops or whatever. I can't remember exactly what was going on, but I came to the realization that my highest value has always been shared experiences. And that was such an eye-opener. No kidding. Maybe that's why I'm drawn to tourism and adventure travel. And it's shared experiences, and it's everywhere in my life. That could just even be going out on a date with my, a partner, or going on a hike or whatever. It's so important to me that it just made sense. And I suspect that if you looked at So where I'm going with this is, have you got, like, what do you think your highest values are, and how does that tie into, I love groups, the more complicated, the better. Are you able to make that connection?
100%, personally and professionally, I think my biggest task and what I'm looking for every day is intimate connections. So not necessarily being, and my family would speak to this if they were here on this podcast. I love small dinners with just five of us, with just, a few of us, and having that intimate connection versus a giant group family reunion. I get overwhelmed.
Okay.
That's just how I'm personally am. So when I'm saying this, I do take groups abroad, travelers that are intimidated by international travel, or they're single and don't have anyone to travel with, their spouse passed away and things like that. And I always keep it at 10 to 12 travelers. I could easily take 30, more. I keep it intimate and small because of that quality experience, quality connection, to where it's, to me personally, is a lot more meaningful. So back to the values, shared experiences at a small group level. That's my personal,
Well,
and
because it's hard to have that. I mean, I guess you could go with 100 people and it's a shared experience, but the valuable part is just ends up being you and the 5 people that you tend to be closest
they'll
to
break
in that
into
group.
smaller groups.
But you're right. Like, I led a lot of group trips, and they were all, I think the largest was more of an event. It was 50, and that was too much. But it was typically 8 to 12 people.
Right.
You could, over the course of a week, you could connect with all of them, and they could connect with each other, and it was beautiful.
Have dinner together. Yeah.
But let me ask you this, because I also heard you say, and the reason that started this whole line of question, you said, oh, I love to put together big groups, and the more complicated they are, the better. Then you kind of came back and said you like the intimacy of traveling in the small groups. So help me, reconcile that. So when you're going, you like a small group, but it sounds like you enjoy putting together the large groups.
Giant groups.
What is it that you enjoy about putting together the giant groups, and how does that feed your value and your desire for intimacy? Or maybe it's some other need. I don't know.
Two separate things. Yeah, it's two separate things. The giant groups, the accomplishment that I'm able to piece it together. It's like putting the puzzle and you're done. You're like, yes. And everyone had a great time, and they did their activities and the team building and the strategy meetings. You have so many pieces. It's very hard to plan. If you're not, they can't have an in-house unless someone is an actual planner, but some HR person is not. It's very difficult. You have to really, first of all, be passionate about it and enjoy piecing things together, and all the deadlines, organizing, negotiating, booking, communicating. There's just a lot. And that's my personality in terms of accomplishment, putting things together for others and presenting a finished product. Go have fun, enjoy the destination, the activities we have planned. The resort is excellent, and things like that. So planning group travel and being a part of group travel are two different things for me.
Yeah, I get that. And I thought you might go that direction with the response. I think a lot of us in this business, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know that especially when I was planning trips and putting together trips and leading trips and all that stuff, I would get probably a dopamine hit or some sort of hormonal hit. And for me, it was, I still don't know exactly why, but for me, maybe the same as that sense of accomplishment. I would get the hit right after I said goodbye to the guests at the airport. Like, we've been out on at a bone fishing lodge somewhere in the Caribbean for a week. And it's when I got them back to the airport, we gave hugs, we said goodbye, and they got on their plane, and whoosh, I would just get this like wash of probably dopamine or whatever it was, relief. I'm not sure.
Right. It is. It's euphoric.
It is. And I would be like, oh my God, I love my job. This is amazing. And da-da-da-da-da. But sometimes during the course of the week, I'm like, oh, this is stressful and da-da-da-da-da. And
a lot. Yes.
I don't think I let it, I think I was maybe that was where the relief came from, is I'm pretty good at masking my stress
And you have to.
because I want them to have fun. Yeah, I
Right.
don't want them
You
like,
have
Jason,
to.
is everything, like if a client walked up to me and said, geez, Jason, is everything okay? I would
No,
feel
no,
like
yeah.
I'd be like, oh my gosh, I've ruined this trip for them.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when literally everything was okay because they're all happy and they're going home with good memories, does it hit, I guess the question is, does it hit you at the same time, or do you have another high spot during the process?
I think there's a few. I get really excited when I nail down the itinerary that I want to promote. That's usually like, yes, I got this and this is what I want to do. Then the next time, I would say when I fill the group, when I do get
Yeah.
12 travelers, and the sooner it
That's a good
fills,
moment.
more exciting it is. It's like, yay, I picked a good itinerary. Everyone wants to come, and I love these people. And it's just like you're pumped. And then it dies down again because you're waiting now. You're, doing the boring work of collecting payments, booking flights, all the admin stuff. And then once you're ready to go and you're having the maybe dinner before travel to discuss, and go everything over with the group, again, you start getting really excited, So I think it's almost like a roller coaster to the
Yeah.
end. And then to your point, the final hit is when everyone had an incredible time and everything went smoothly. And this is a giant accomplishment because we touch other people's lives through travel. And that's really fulfilling to me personally. It is a legacy, that you're leaving and impacting other travelers' lives. And then to your point of keeping your cool, during the trip. We were recently in Cuba in February. I took a ton of us, and the fuel situation
Yeah.
on the island. And the guide would be like, we have literally no fuel, and I'm going to try to get some more tomorrow. We're good for tonight. Obviously, I'm not communicating that to my group, and I'm trusting, my guide who I've traveled with many times before. He'll figure it out. And next morning, we're good. We got more fuel. However, they accomplished, that's the beauty of working with trusted partners and trusted suppliers. And I know you interview some great ones on your show. I'm not worried because I know they got this. And that's who you want to work with, because then you can confidently sell these trips to your clients and trust that they'll have the best time and they'll be taken care of, when they're in another country.
Yeah, it's really hard to, I think for people like you and I and others, probably anybody listening to the show, is that we really, really care.
Right.
You don't work in tourism if you don't care about people. You don't last long. So we really care. So it's really hard for most of us to present an itinerary or to propose. I can use the word sell because that is the word.
We are salespeople.
Yeah,
yes.
It has some connotations to it. But if you're selling something you're excited about and you believe in and that is going to deliver the value, then that doesn't feel like selling. It's just feeling delivering
the value. Exactly.
Yes. And it's really, really hard to do that if you don't really know what the outcome is going to be. If you're just like, I found this trip on a website somewhere and I'm a brand new travel advisor and it looks cool and they're offering me a really big commission,
right?
But they can't sell it.
Disaster.
It can be because, it looks great commission, whatever, but I don't really know. I don't really feel confident. And that's going to come across in your voice. It's going to come across in your actions and all that stuff. Where I'm going with that, I have no idea. It's, And part of it is fixing problems, hopefully before they happen, or getting ahead of things. And especially when you're leading a trip, because it's just, I don't know if you're like me, but it's like throughout the whole trip, like, I know the partners are great. I know we'll figure it out, but I also know things happen. I know vehicles run out of gas. I know things break. I know guides don't show up sometimes, believe it or not, that type of thing. But having the faith in your ability to figure it out is one thing, but also just not putting that burden or that worry on your clients. Another comparison real quick. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes at the end of the week, like, wow, Jason, that was amazing. Everything ran so smoothly. You guys had everything worked out from the beginning. And you have no idea. I'm not going to say it to him, but I'm like,
right.
have no idea how many, you know, things came up that needed to be addressed that were not planned, that were not part of the
Right.
itinerary.
Right.
But the fact you didn't notice is like, wow, that's really, really cool. And I know that you've
That's the
had the same.
goal, you
Yeah.
know. And we get anxious clients, but that's why they come to me, because they need someone to make sure that it goes well. They're not just finding things on Google. They're working with a professional with great contacts in many different regions of the world. And then back to the previous topic we touched, if you can't handle the stress that goes behind the scenes, you
Mm-hmm.
cannot do this job well and keep the clients, I don't want to say protected, but protected from the stress.
Well, yeah, that's why they chose to go with you.
Right. And if you just
Ice
want
is
to
going to
travel
take
the
care of
world
all.
and work 3 hours a week, again, these are just the perks. You have to be compassionate, passionate about the industry, be able to solve problems, be super creative, because every client comes with a different wish list. And how are you going to meet those needs? There's just
Yeah.
a lot of different skill sets.
I suspect because you've done team building and you've worked in corporate as well, but you've done the team building. When you're looking to recruit, instead of just like, well, I want to travel for free or I want to be super flexible and only work when I want. But the other part of it is like, if I were to ask you if you could only recruit from one industry to maybe find somebody that would be a good travel advisor or trip leader or work in this business, is there a particular industry that pops in your head? Because I've asked this question a few times and I've seen some patterns. So I'm curious what type of industry or background work experience would probably be the one you'd go after.
I think anyone with an entrepreneurial spirit.
Wait a minute. Steve Jobs is an entrepreneur, was an entrepreneur.
Right.
So
Well,
what kind of entrepreneur?
In a different sector, very technical. I mean, he's just was incredible.
But I heard
Talk
he was
another hour just about him.
I heard he was kind of a jerk, though. I don't think he'd be a good trip leader.
Well, yes, you definitely cannot have a short temper. When I say entrepreneurial spirit, as the first thing that comes to mind is just being driven, self-motivated, creative, passionate, and then interactive with people, obviously people friendly, people person, which again goes back to the sales types of jobs because we as independent travel advisors, this is not AAA. No, this is not a big agency that they'll pay you salary to put these trips together and things like that. We build our books of business from literally zero clients.
Okay, I got it.
So to build your business, you have to be able to sell, even if we don't like this word, it is a sales job. At the same time, it's a people relationship job, which goes hand in hand with sales. And then, like I said, just being self-driven, I'm not going to stand there and monitor your performance and how many, trainings did you do this week and how motivated are you to go out there and attend networking events. All of that is on you. But I think the biggest thing is being people's person. Teachers, I would say, like I said, insurance agents.
That's the one I was expecting you to say. I was just curious.
Waitresses, waiters.
Teachers.
I've done all of, I've been a waitress and I've many years, through college, and I have no problem upselling because you're offering a better product that suits your client's needs. And if you're embarrassed to do that, you're doing a disservice to the client to begin with, because you're not offering, a product that's going to make their vacation better or their meal better, And you have to be a people's person to be in this industry, because all I do all day is talk to clients, suppliers, partners via email and phone. And if you don't enjoy that, it's going to be torturous because you're going to have to communicate and interact.
I get that completely. And it's interesting. I realized something as you were sharing that, because everything you said makes so much sense. There's definitely the entrepreneurial side because you're all kind of independent contractor types. And
you have to.
If you're not entrepreneurial, that's an issue. And then what I realized as we're discussing that, though, is there's a bit of a difference. If you were just hiring trip leaders, Maybe they don't need to be so entrepreneurial, maybe good problem solvers, but I realize that there's two possible responses there depending on what we're talking about. Being
Right.
an advisor is definitely the entrepreneurial thing. You're probably, if you're not traveling with groups, you're probably dealing with one guest at a time or one potential client at a time. Whereas the trip leader thing was actually more where I was going with the question, or I thought I was.
Got you. Now, that's a really
But then when you
small
mentioned
part of my
teachers,
business.
I get that. And I realized that as you were saying that, it's like, oh yeah, if you were hiring trip leaders, you'd probably like teachers is the two that I hear the most often when this conversation comes up is who would you hire to lead trips if you couldn't hire someone with tourism experience? It'd be like, yeah, teachers. Bartenders is another one that actually I spoke with someone that spent a couple years bartending before he got into tourism, and he's leading
They're
trips.
so right.
Well, that, and if you're a bartender, you got to keep a bunch of people happy. They all have different moods, different attitudes, different needs, different states of inebriation, which sometimes happens on group trips as well.
And you're an entertainer, ultimately.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people come to the bar to connect with others.
Maybe a huge nightclub's a different story in a sense, but like a good bartender is going to make every single person in that bar feel like they're their friend. Like, right? And you know that when not that maybe I spend some time in bars, but when you go in there and you feel like the bartender is your new best buddy, maybe it's the first time you've gone in there, you're like, I'm going back there.
It's like your safety zone right there by the bar.
Yeah. And it's like, this guy's pretty cool. And a trip leader is kind of the same thing. Like if you're on a trip, as we talked about kind of the smaller trips where you can get to know people. In my experience, it was like, if I could befriend everybody on the trip, by the end of the week, they felt like I'm their new best friend. And if they're asking me, okay, where are we going next? Jason, where are we going next?
That's like, the biggest compliment.
I accomplished something. Yeah. So I'm just an interesting moment. I'm going to share that. I don't know if you can even hear it. And for those people listening, I'm in Bogota, Colombia. And there's a protest walking by right outside the window.
I was wondering if it's like a soccer game. Where are you?
I think it's a protest. There's people holding banners, and I'm in downtown Bogota, Colombia. And before we started this conversation, I was worried about maybe the road noise. I didn't quite expect that. So anyway, that's kind of charming. So this is an adventure travel podcast, so we always have some adventure mixed into it. So
Life is an adventure.
Absolutely. So let's do this, because we've talked a lot about kind of what you're doing, the things you've learned. I really want to figure out how the heck you got here. As you mentioned, you're kind of Northern European. Your accent's a little different than mine. You do live in the U.S. though, right?
Yes, in Delaware, Delaware State.
So how far back do we need to go into your story to figure out, like all the traumas and all the crazy stuff that went on that caused you to decide to work in the tourism business? How far back we definitely want to go back to Europe, but how far back should we go?
Well, we need to open a bottle of wine and extend this show 2 more hours.
We come back and do another episode on,
a follow-up.
Aiste's trauma and what caused her to go into tourism. So anyway.
So yes, I am from Lithuania, a small country in the Baltics in Eastern Europe, and we are somewhat similar and have a great influence from the Scandinavia. And that's why I say North, in that perspective. I think being from another country has set me up for having a better understanding and passion for different cultures, different upbringings, and curiosity as well. Each country has so much to offer, no matter how famous they are in social media. Everyone knows Italy. How many people know Lithuania? But if you go travel in Lithuania, it's incredible. So I think just being from another country and having to adapt in a new country, I moved to the United States when I was 20 years old. So I've been here for more than half of my life now, and having to learn a new language, new culture. There's still some days when I get a little culture shock in certain things. There's some things just won't, you're just so engraved from your upbringing that it's interesting to hear a different perspective. But again, I think that's what helped me promote travel and then comfort my clients when they are going overseas. It is not scary. We're all different, but it's interesting.
Do you think the fact that you have an accent, it's kind of obvious that you didn't grow up in the States? I mean, it's not a strong accent, but there's enough, and maybe the spelling of your name. Do you think that comforts people? Does that give you an advantage? Not just from the standpoint
I think it does.
that you understand the world, but do they think, oh, well, she's from overseas, so she must know more about travel than I do because I grew up in the U.S. Do you think so?
I think it does give comfort. And not only because I grew up in Europe, but because I travel so much. Go each year, I visit 10 to 15 countries a year. That's usually my travel schedule. So I'm constantly immersed in different cultures. And I am able to tell clients, you'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, they speak
they
English.
just believe you. But okay. But I want to definitely stay. And I apologize because I kind of shifted the direction.
No, it's okay.
But I want to stay and like. So I'm a gentleman, so I don't ask age questions. You're younger than I am. But when you were growing up, how much of an influence was former Soviet Union? It's probably still on some levels an influence with the older generations. But I'd love to hear kind of your story around that and how you think that might have impacted your life or your family or your trajectory.
Sure. So I was born, yes, in the former Soviet Union, and I was 7 or 8 years old when it ended. And I I remember I was old enough to remember things. I'm like the youngest of the people who remember how
Right.
different life
Yeah.
was in that setting. We didn't travel. And, post, the independent Lithuania in the 90s was getting it together. The country had no currency, no jobs, no future, very sad times. No one traveled. We didn't have money for vacations. We did road trips. My family is very curious. All of us are very curious, and we found ways to explore with no jobs and no money. So I think that engraved that curiosity. And, visiting like we would visit even like cemeteries where famous people were buried. That would be
Mhm.
our weekend, curiosity trip,
Yeah.
vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having picnics, on a famous hill of Lithuania. We don't have mountains. Swimming in the lake, things like that. But I think because we were active, regardless on how much life was given us, created that personality where I want to do things like this, on a much larger scale, obviously.
Yeah. Do you think your parents were naturally that way? Or do you think that they were making some sort of effort to make your lives a little bit more enjoyable during difficult times? Or I guess what I'm saying is if the finances were stable, because I understand that things really changed a lot. And I've heard people say that the 4 years before the fall of the Soviet Union was a lot better than the 4 years after. So I'm wondering if I was a parent with young kids going through all that, I might even be concerned about their mental well-being as they grow up because that's an age you can leave some marks, right? So do you think that they were intentionally making an effort to distract you maybe, or was it just part of their nature to just go explore and stuff like that? Do you have a feel for that?
Yeah, I do. I think that culturally, Lithuanians and Eastern Europeans, they're very curious people and very active. When we go home and visit, and I still say go home, even though my home is here now, I just always say I go home. I do feel home because after dinner, everyone is out in the city, walking, talking, meeting, that culture, that European vibe at 10 p.m., still light out because we're very close to the north. In summertime, families gathering again, just, kids playing basketball. It's very active in general. I'm sure there was a lot of stress for the adults during that time, but you still want to have fun with your family, even if it's, something simple like a picnic and swimming in the lake or visiting famous people, the graves of the famous people and learning literature through that, learning history by visiting certain manors and castles. And, like I said, each country has so much to offer. But I think that naturally the culture is like this. And that's where I have it so much too, that I love active weekends, active evenings. Learning through travel is so much more fun than going to, I don't know, certain, even tuning into a webinar. It's cool, but if you're actually in Italy doing these things and learning and through locals and interactions with the locals and food and songs and music, and it's just, really beautiful in that.
And it's not about us are able to change
Right.
the past. It doesn't, the past is the past. And do you remember feeling like your parents were more on the optimistic side of where things were going? Because I was in Georgia not too long ago, a little less than a year ago. And it was interesting because I spoke with some young people that are very kind of westernized. They want to be part of the EU. And then there were some of the older generations, or even some of the younger people I spoke with, their parents or their grandparents kind of still missed the Soviet Union. Honestly, they just felt like that was much better, and probably because of all the crap that happened during the transition. But do you remember feeling like your parents were like, this is a good thing, it will get better, or or boy, this country really made a mistake, or the whole, not just Lithuania, but do you remember a sense of that?
I remember that everyone that we knew, were obviously for freedom. I think my parents and adults in general did a good job to just not maybe scare the children and only share the things that mattered, like patriotism, like my grandparents were very passionate about that as well. Patriotism, the love for your country, and yes, the times are hard. And that's it. You didn't know that maybe they have literally pennies in their wallet. You knew times were bad, but you never knew how bad. You knew you had a roof over your head and food on the table, and you were able to walk to school. And, I sound like I'm 80 years old, but...
Well, yeah, I get it. You went through... Not just you, obviously, but a large portion of the world went through has not just the fall of the Soviet Union, but a lot of things have happened. But I mean, you've got an interesting perspective compared probably to a lot of your guests that travel. I'm just guessing.
Right. Well, and back to, why I'm so passionate about different cultures and offering, different experiences is there's so many stories. And, I have so many friends that came to the United States during the same time, looking for a better life. And we all have a different story. We joke sometimes on how much money we brought with us. I'll be like, I came to America with $500, and my friend will be like, well, I only had $300.
Someone else chimes in, well, I only had 100. And somebody,
and it's just,
we hear those
so many different
Yeah,
stories. Yeah. So my story is not different, special. It's just different, and it's unique to me. And the love, I think, for travel comes from the love for history and different cultures and different experiences and active engagement on your free time.
Do you remember the first non-Lithuanian person you met, or tell me about the first non-Lithuanian person that you remember meeting? Maybe that's a better question.
Growing up in Soviet Union, our borders were closed, so we didn't get a lot of foreigners, and we couldn't go places either outside of Soviet Union to the Western world and things like that. But I remember seeing Americans on the street in the city in Lithuania, and we knew they were Americans because they were dressed very simple.
They're wearing t-shirts and flip-flops with a can of beer in their hand.
Like sneakers, and yeah, it's just simple and comfortable, normal. To us, it was interesting. And they were smiling. And like seeing the smiles was so interesting to us as kids. I don't know how old I was, a teenager. And we'll be like, look, Americans are in the city, Americans are visiting. And we knew because they were warm and smiling and simple. Those were my first and not even direct interactions, but just seeing foreigners.
I gotta ask. You specifically you used the word smiling 2 or 3 times just now. And when I hear that, I think Lithuanians don't smile. I mean, you talked about going out, doing experiences and stuff like that, but do Lithuanians not generally smile during those times as much as the Americans did? No,
it's a great question. They don't. And I think a lot of countries still are culture shock to Americans when they go visit. We talked about, your experience as well. It's different now because it's westernized, and we do have quite a bit of foreigners, especially in the capital, different cultures starting to mix together and westernize Eastern Europe in general, I believe. And someone smiling is not as crazy. But, when you walk by on a street and you make eye contact, 20 years ago, you just turn away and keep going.
Yeah, yeah. It's
But
still like that
now
in some
you
places.
might
And
be a bit, right. It's cultural and no
yeah,
one
yeah,
is mean to you. And I always say this, to Americans here, to my friends. No, it's not about you. It's the culture. And you're a guest, in this country, and you truly don't have a say. You just absorb it and learn and admire some different cultural differences.
yeah, yeah. And I wonder because maybe if there's not a lot of smiling going on culturally, but then maybe somebody does show up smiling ear to ear, waving, Mr. Friendly. Hey, how's it going? Maybe it's not that they are upset that you're smiling, but they just don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
Or they just think you're weird. Think, wow, that guy's weird.
It's just a disconnect between cultures because there is not something similar. And some cultures are just more reserved, and I thrived as I remember, arriving to the States for a summer job. I loved how warm and friendly and sunny it was. That's what I remember. It was sunny. It was, friendly and happy. And these emotions worked for me. For others, maybe it's overwhelming. I don't know. When you grow up in a reserved country and where everyone is a bit more serious and express, emotions differently, it might
They have boundaries.
Freak you out.
We discussed that. They have boundaries.
Right.
So was there a moment, like you mentioned, you kind of were always kind of going out exploring. You were curious, even if that meant you were going to a graveyard or whatever. Do you remember I asked you about the moment when you noticed Americans or people from the United States or North America, whatever. Do you remember the moment when you thought, I am leaving Lithuania, I want to leave Lithuania to either temporarily to travel, or do you remember that moment?
Yes, definitely. It was the first time I've ever been on a plane. I was 20 years old. I've never been on a plane before. So that alone was really exciting.
That's exciting, yeah.
And yes, it was just a moment of my life, to go see something completely different, to meet people from all over the world. We were the students working at different shops like Subway or waitressing jobs, or, I was a lifeguard at a pool, different fun things. And then it was the biggest adventure of my life. And all I remember was just how excited I was. I didn't think of it as like a new future. I wasn't planning on staying. It was just a summer adventure to have fun. You're 20 years old. You should be having a lot of fun while earning some money. That was a work and a travel program through our university, and seeing the world. That was my first see the world type.
And that was the trip to the U.S., or was that something different?
Yes.
Or was that a different one?
It was exactly my trip here.
So it was through a school program, kind of like a summer work program.
Work and travel.
How long was it?
So the visa, I believe, is 4 months. I can't remember now. It was so long ago. It's just for a summer, so you would come back to the university and continue your life in Lithuania, and that was my plan originally.
So were you traveling with other students from the university you already knew, or?
So we got split up. The United States is giant, and we had to have a job before we came. That was the way to get a visa. You had to have an employer. So my employer was in Ocean City, Maryland, about 30 miles from here, and it was the lifeguard at the pool, the big condo building.
So did you have other Lithuanians, any of the other students around you?
There were just a few we met. It's crazy. When I think about it now, I would have not signed up for anything like it at this age, being over 40, early 40s. But when you're 20, and this is the first opportunity to experience the world, and America, especially in those days, was the dream country. And it was just mind-blowing to be here. Okay,
had you learned some English? Where were you at in your English level when you did that?
I would say 2 out of 10, maybe.
Okay, all right,
at the best.
Awesome.
And then I could understand certain accents. We were taught British English, and then you come to the countryside, you have different ethnicities. I couldn't understand anything, I remember this bus driver tried to explain it to me where to get off, and I just kept staring at her and had no idea. I had no idea what she's talking about, and she just had to point fingers, And I always saw my class.
You didn't have Google Translate on your phone,
Nothing.
did you?
I didn't have a phone, actually.
Exactly.
And that's my point. I tell my clients all the time, of course, it's great to prepare for situations and think about things, but you will make it. People will help. If you don't speak the same language, you'll point fingers, draw pictures. It becomes a team bonding activity between cultures. I just had that in China in March. We couldn't understand each other and I wanted to buy something. And naturally, people want to help each other. And it's funny because you're laughing at the same, you're like, I have no idea what you're saying. And it's so fun, I think. And you have to be brave or you won't experience certain things.
So as a European, so now we're going to discuss the typical person that grows up in the US, or just maybe some differences. And there's I'm not talking positive, negative, anything like that. I recognize that a lot of Europeans have access to other countries very close that speak different languages and have different cultures. And if you grow up in Des Moines, Iowa, or even Delaware, or, I don't know, Oregon, you got to go a long ways to find a different culture or language. I mean, maybe different kind of barbecue, but that's about, And so I think that a lot of Americans that haven't traveled, or a lot of people from the U.S. that haven't had the opportunity to travel, it can be kind of scary. Whereas a lot of Europeans, backpacked around, they took their gap year and they've been to 14 different countries and it's no big deal. So that's part of it. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but that's part of it. And then the other part is, but what we do here sometimes are stereotypes, or what we do see is the news of what's happening in Africa at any given time, or South America, or we think every person that grows up in the U.S. that has thought maybe they'd like to go to Paris has probably heard the stereotype that if you don't speak French, they're going to be mean to you, right? So do you see that? Do you think that that's part of it? Well, it is part of it, I guess. It's the stereotypes, and also it's just you don't know what you don't know if you grew up in the States.
Yes, and the States are more isolated in the term, we're surrounded by two oceans and then we're surrounded by two countries. That's it. And in Europe, like you mentioned, at any given time you can drive to multiple countries and experience a completely different culture for the weekend.
Yeah.
We can drive to Poland, we can drive to Latvia, from just Lithuania.
Yeah. Well, and also the US is so big that here, I'll compare it to New Zealand, because I've been to New Zealand. I've had a lot of conversations with people from New Zealand. It's super common for them to take a gap year and go to Europe or wherever.
Right.
It's because it's such a small island or a small country.
Right.
It's not one island. It's a relatively small country. And it's like, if you really kind of want to go see the world, you got to get on a plane, where if you
far
go
away.
Yeah. Where if you grow up in Iowa and you want to go see the world, that might look like New York City or Los Angeles. But in New Zealand, and Australia is not quite different enough, I guess. So they're more likely to get on a plane, and go. And it's very interesting in just my travels. I travel full time. I'm in Colombia right now. I'm way more likely to see someone from Europe in a hostel than I am someone from the United States, even though the United States is so close.
Right. I think, naturally people are focused on things that are familiar. So again, back to Italy, it's my top country that I plan to travel to. Italy has a lot to offer, obviously, but it's also something very popular and common and feels comfortable.
Because of pizza and Olive Garden, probably,
food,
right?
And then just, knowing others who've been to Italy, like how many people do you know, like you said, you're not seeing Americans in a Colombia. But there are different types of travelers. The first timers, they go to Italy, they'll go to UK because they speak English, London, things like that. But then those travelers become experienced travelers. They become more comfortable and it's not scary. You get on the plane, you get off the plane. It's just like here.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Then they're like, okay, now we want to go to Colombia. We are now ready to go to a different continent. And it's just that trust builds over time. And I think, for me, I think I'm brave on just a normal, basic personal level, moving to a different country. I've been through a lot of different situations and everything worked out.
That's very brave.
My tolerance for danger is different from someone who's never been, abroad. And that's why I think it's comforting for, clients to be talking to an advisor that's experienced in travel and has seen different continents, and then kind of easing people into.
Yeah.
And you get hooked. You go to one continent, one country, and you want to get out again, and you're planning the next trip as soon as you go home, because travel it is addicting in, a good way. It brings so many different emotions, positive emotions, and it's a learning experience, and it should be a part of therapy, for people to travel.
I think individually, but also just socially, culturally, like globally, which is actually why I named this podcast Big World Made Small. It was about getting people to go to these places, because when you go have these experiences, it brings us all closer.
Exactly.
I almost can't. I've traveled a lot in the business before, but I've been traveling full-time 4.5 years. And this past year was the first time I ran into somebody while traveling that clearly had some issues around racism and was just a problem person. He had problems. And I met him in a place. I met him in Vietnam, and he was from Poland. And just I was so shocked. Like, what are you doing here? Like, because people that travel outside their home countries tend to just be super open to meeting people from all different races and cultures,
right.
and all. And it was such a shock. After it took me 4.5 years to meet another traveler that I thought was missing the whole point. Why are you here? But
to your point, it's a minority, thankfully. Like I always say, 99% of the world, people are happy to see other people. It's interesting, like bringing back, my travels in China in March. Locals want to take pictures with us. They don't see tourists that often. We were like celebrities, and everyone is laughing, and no one can speak the same language. And it's just like, to me, that's what it's all about. People are naturally kind, and they will help you during travels, and they want to strengthen those relationships, with other cultures. We are curious, and we want to see and learn different things.
It is. It's very interesting. And they're curious by nature, but like you take someone from outside, like you in China or me. And I remember the same thing in Thailand. The first time someone came up and asked me to take a picture with them, I thought, who do I look like? I'm like, am I so big that they think I'm a football player? Like I need to start eating less. I had no idea. I could not figure out why they thought that they should take a picture with me. And then it happened a few more times, and I started to kind of connect the dots. And it's like, no,
it's just you're unique, you're different, and it's crazy that to them that there is a stranger in their country, and friendly, smiling, and nice, and the news show a lot of the bad things and create that anxiety. I wish they showed a more balanced world that we actually have.
And you will not I suspect our listeners, like we're preaching to the choir here, but you will not know how biased the news is until you leave your country. And then you'll be like, wait a minute, this is, Italy, probably people have, I've never been to Italy, so I don't really know what to expect, but I have ideas in my head because I grew up with Italy is a cool place. You'd see TV commercials. I think it was Perillo Tours or whatever his name was. I remember.
Yeah,
and
they're like, still on.
Okay, yeah, go to Italy with Perillo or whatever. And so that seemed kind of safe. Colombia, when I was growing up, you didn't see anything positive on the news about Colombia. And even to the point when I first came here 4.5 years ago, my family was like, why are you going there? You shouldn't go there, da, 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 da. And I have not seen anything even close to anything I saw growing up. And I know things have changed. Things are right. I'm not saying they were fine all along. There weren't. The people here went through a lot of trauma, a lot of crap. But it's like, man, here or so many other places, like people are people. People are excited to chat with you. And not everybody in the world hates Americans. Oh, that's a big thing. Like a lot of people haven't left the U.S. They're like, oh, the whole world hates us. Everybody hates us. So if I go somewhere, they're going to want to kidnap me, hurt me, rob me, whatever. True. Like every time someone says, where are you from? And I say, I'm from the States. In 4.5 years, I've never had anybody look at me with any look of disgust or disdain or anything. It's like they want to, I have a cousin who lives in the States, or they want to create a connection, or
People, they'll even share their compassion because they also see news that may not be true about America. Because I have family in Europe and they'll be like, oh my God, everyone is shooting each other, all this
I know.
politics, and then all the hurricanes are destroying the country. And we had like a hurricane in one state,
Yeah.
It's all exaggerated. And then, so what I'm trying to say is I've had people ask me, where I'm from. I'm from the States. They actually are compassionate and they'll be like, how is it there? How are you doing there?
Yeah.
Again, back to my belief that generally people are good all over the world. So
Yeah.
I've actually experienced that, and I've never experienced anyone being rude to me because I'm from the United States.
Yeah. I think I had one other traveler. I think I was in Colombia and I think he was from, I don't know, somewhere in Europe. And I did say something of, like, I just met him and he was asking, oh, what were you up to today? And I said, oh, there's this really cool mall. And he said, oh, you Americans and malls. And I was like, I got offended, but that's because, I just like, oh, what are you talking about? I like street food.
But hey, that's a culture thing. So yeah, we love malls,
Well,
that's a culture thing.
Well, honestly, what I reflected on was he had just arrived in Colombia. He'd never been to a mall in Colombia because they like malls in Colombia a lot more than they do in the U.S. It's like the mall, like it's impressive in many countries.
Countries, yes, especially in Asia too.
Amazing malls with like street food, like the food court is like street food or whatever,
Yeah.
or they've got all these amazing restaurants,
multiple level,
cool stuff, and it's like, I don't care. I stand by it. It was interesting. It was an interesting mall. So anyway, just real quick, did you grow up, it sounds like maybe you grew up with siblings. I'm curious if they kind of went similar directions, or what are your observations about kind of like your choice compared, I don't even know if we want to bring this up. They might listen to this, but tell me more.
I hope they listen to this. I'm very close with my family. We have a small family. I have one brother and one cousin. That's how small my family is. And I have one aunt and uncle. We all are travelers, explorers, curious people. Everyone lives in Lithuania. I was the wild one who left. And again, I wasn't planning on staying, and just things unraveled differently for the better, of course. But so I'm the oldest from the sibling situation. And I think I saw the most of that dark period, when I was graduating high school, corruption, jobs, crime. That was the theme. I'm the next to be in the workforce, but there's no job. What am I going to do? My brother and my cousin, they were way, behind. So by the time they graduated, things were starting to get better. And I think the motivation to stay was greater than, I had. And then the borders opening up in Europe in general, with the post-Soviet Union bloc, they had more opportunities. Maybe in summer they could work in the UK or in Denmark picking strawberries, in Norway at the fish factory. The jobs were closer, and then you come home. It's very different. Times just changed significantly. And now Lithuania is one of the strongest economies for the post-Soviet Union countries. It's very Western. Like I said, a lot of different cultures live there. High quality and tech companies and different Michelin star restaurants. Is just really great place, and still authentic enough because it's not so touristy. So do I regret, not waiting it out like the rest of my family? I don't, because I, created a great life here and different opportunities were given to me, but they just did not have the same motivation. It was just a different time,
I mean, I know you left, you went to the US, you worked for the summer, you said you were a lifeguard, but then so you went back to Lithuania. I can't speak now. I'll just share that we were just discussing that I just cracked open a beer, and now I guess you can hear it in my voice. So anyway, so you presumably went back after that, and then kind of walk us through, how did you end up living in the US and doing this kind of work?
Sure. So I actually didn't go back. I loved it so much that I decided to stay and go to college here. And still thinking, maybe I'll go back after college. Still, I was so young, early 20s. And I finished college here in Salisbury University, in a local college, with a psychology degree. And I got a job at the corporate that I mentioned. That I only had one real job. We won't call it, obviously my job now is real. When,
We
working for
discussed
someone
that.
else.
Remember that?
Right, right. I know. That's why I'm, showing parentheses. This job is very real. But that was my first job at a corporate level. And that's how I envisioned my life at that time. I got married with my previous husband and we have 2 kids. And that was kind of 10 years of climbing a corporate ladder, raising my kids,
What did you
living.
what did you major in school? You said
So
psychology. Psychology? Right. Why did you
psychology, yes.
Yeah, why did you I'm just curious why you chose psychology.
I love psychology. That would be if something happened and I can't do this job anymore, I would go back and get a PhD and have my own practice. It truly was a passion of mine and it is still. I think on a personal level, that's where we start kind of digging, and then you get fascinated with all the interesting theories and all the history and it's just, to me, that's a very interesting part. But you know how life is, doesn't go as you plan it. I had kids, no time for PhD,
What kind of work?
had to focus on.
The
Mhm.
real job. What were you doing? What kind of work?
So I worked for a third-party logistics company, and it's like, you get placed into certain parts throughout your life to help you better in the future. So my 8 years of experience at the third-party logistics company, which is basically a logistics broker, transportation broker, helped me think in so many different ways in running a business because I did climb that corporate ladder, like, I call it, from an entry level, a part-time temp that was still in college to, helping grow a new department as a director of logistics services. So the journey was very, very good. I'm very thankful for what I've learned there, the relationships that I built. It's, the company actually is one of my largest clients currently.
Cool.
It's like they'll never get rid of me. It's been now, I don't know, 18 years that we know each other. And they're top 20 broker in the United States, a large company. So I don't remember where I was going with this, but it was an interesting journey, like I said, and so I never used really my psychology degree directly, but I always joke that I am kind of a counselor for my clients, traveling, keeping them calm and organized, listening to their, anxious thoughts, talking them through the process.
Well, that's part of why I asked you why you chose psychology, because it is such a natural fit for
Right.
anything sales related, probably.
Right.
But especially, I think definitely in tourism, like whether you're leading a trip or dealing with somebody before they go on a trip or
People's business.
after the trip,
Right.
or even the vendors. I mean, boy, that's we won't even.
It's all relationships.
That's a conversation for a whole nother podcast, is dealing with international vendors and the different cultural things and mindsets and just the way people do things. Yeah, we should come back and discuss that another time. So you said you were with the third-party logistics company, which I honestly had no idea what you're talking about. I was kind of guessing what maybe that was.
If you are a customer that needs to move a load of diapers from Pennsylvania to California and you don't have your own trucks, you could call the trucking companies directly and try to choose the best and cheapest option, but then that would take forever. So you'll call me and I have my contacts and get you a truck real quick for a good price. That's just a very basic explanations because we did trains, planes, I mean, so many different things, And it's kind of what I do now as well, which is interesting. Yeah, you come to me, you want to go to Europe, and then I have a pocket full of partners that I love to use. And I know that, they'll take really good care of my clients. And instead of doing your own research, you're utilizing my knowledge and my partnerships.
So that was your experience in the corporate world, and you said it was your only real experience in the corporate world. So help our listeners kind of understand what happened, like where in that process did you decide, you know what, I think I'm more of an entrepreneurial type, or I want to do something different, and how did you make it happen?
I think it was a perfect storm of a lot of things happening in my early 30s. I was going, through a divorce with my children's father. At the same time, finishing an MBA. At the same time, kind of reaching a ceiling in my career. And if I wanted to break that ceiling, it would have been not what I wanted to do. It was like soul searching, middle life crisis, I guess, pretty early in my life, And kids were little, they were 2 and 6 years old. And I felt like I wasn't there for them as much as I could because I was so devoted to my career and to the studies and, like I said, some personal things going through. It's just all kind of broke down to, do I want my life to look like this forever? Or, how can I create something? Like I told you earlier, when I wake up in the morning, I'm thrilled to open my laptop. I'm actually really excited to see who emailed me and who wants to go where. So, it took years to get here. I'm talking about it like it was this easy road, but figuring out what I want to do took me a year of just Googling. We didn't have AI then, ChatGPT, all the helpers, modern helpers. I just really Googled my way into being a travel advisor. And like I said, it took me about a year, and I started as like a fun side project to kind of add something fun to do on weekends. And I did that for a year until it blew up to where I had to choose. Am I sticking with a safe job, at the corporate? Or am I sticking with something very adventurous with unlimited opportunity and I get to control my life,
It's a risk, but yeah,
it's a huge risk.
When you look back, imagine somebody in your same situation, which I know there's so many variables. I get that. I guess I should say, were there moments since then when you look back and said, you know what, I wish I would have just jumped quicker and then I could have got my business up and running quicker? Or are you happy that you took the year to kind of get things built up to the point where it was like, okay, now it's a viable option?
Yeah, I'm happy with the process that I went through in terms of learning and experiencing my career, at a corporate level, and then taking my time because it was a huge change. And I didn't want to go to get another job at a different third-party logistics company. That wasn't an issue. The issue was I don't want to be in a logistics industry. I don't want to work for someone else anymore. I want to do my own thing. And like I said, that would bring so much value to my life to where I enjoy my career until I'm physically unable to work, let's say. And that was the big question for me. I really think I went through a midlife crisis. It was like, how do I turn my life around to where I am fulfilled in my career and lifestyle, which goes to love for travel. I mean, I love traveling forever. I don't even remember since when. And people saw me as a travel expert without me owning a travel agency,
I guess I should
People
ask
called
you.
me world traveler.
Well, I guess that begs the question, because we talked about your first time really traveling was to the U.S. You stayed in the U.S. You went to school. You started working for the logistics company. Were you able, and you had kids, were you able to travel during that time? Yeah, a lot of things were happening. So, but I hear you saying people were looking at you as the travel expert. So tell us a little bit about how you were able to manage that.
Sure. So I think having family in Europe was, kind of forcing me to go more than a normal parent with a 2-year-old and a, 6-year-old. My kids have been on planes before they learned to speak pretty much, because I wanted them to see, family and visit other countries. And I think naturally it drew us, to travel. And I traveled some for work as well, but mostly domestically. But not many people go to Europe as often as I do. And I think that gave me that world traveler label, because I'm often traveling internationally.
You mentioned going back visiting family. You wanted your kids to presumably see their grandparents, stuff like that. I guess I got to ask, was your family kind of pissed off at you when you didn't go back after your summer?
Yeah, 100%. Of course. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still hard at times. You do question the decision, especially when Lithuania is doing so well now, it's like, it's hard. It's hard to be away from family. Thankfully, I have now built, a life here with lots of friends, with my husband's family that were very close. I have that support. but I would give anything to just, have this weekend together with my brother drinking beer on my
Yeah.
deck, casual. Hey, stop by after work. We see each other a few times a year, which is still not bad, but it's
Yeah,
not the
it's tough.
same. And that's the probably biggest thing that I question, just being away from family, in general.
You were talking about the kind of your age group, like you were at the point where when you would be looking for work, there wasn't any work. And you left and you indicated that it sounded like a lot of people around your age range left. So I'm curious, do they talk about it in Lithuania, maybe other former Soviet Union bloc countries, where there's like a whole age group just missing, it sounds like? I can imagine.
Yeah, totally. My generation, thankfully, a lot of that generation that didn't move as far as I did came back.
Okay.
So we have a lot of people coming back, but I can't imagine leaving my life here and moving back and starting again from zero. And, my kids are American. My husband
Yeah.
is American. His
Well,
family
yeah,
is
yeah,
here.
yeah.
It's not fair to start demanding to live in Europe now. When we met, I'm an American citizen and I've been living here for many years.
Well, I wasn't suggesting you go back. I was just trying to imagine what that does to a culture when there's kind of a whole generation. Like you said, some go back, but like if in your, a person in your age group, if they chose to go back, if they were single, they didn't have a family, they wanted a family, and this could have been at any point in the last 20 years. It's like, well, geez, I would like to go back. Someone offered me a job there. I could go back, but if I go back, there's going to be very few people around my age there that are maybe, for starting a family with or dating or whatever. So it's just something I really hadn't.
Yeah, I don't know the
before.
statistics. I don't know if it's that significant, but it was a more significant movement than normal, in terms of immigration and things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
During that time.
So you started your business kind of as a part-time thing, and I'm guessing, based on what you just said, I'm guessing it was not because you wanted to take free trips.
No, I actually didn't believe they existed. People were. I'm like, why would someone give you a free trip? And it truly doesn't exist until you reach a certain level. That's when the partners are interested in bringing you over and showing their product, the destination. And that's when you start getting those perks. So you actually have to produce quite a bit to start getting those perks. And if you're not interested in working hard, you won't get to that,
Yeah. I think maybe there's this misperception that that's just part of the training process. If I sign up and become a part of a network or join a team or whatever, that obviously they're going to send me to all these places so I can just see the people walking into it thinking,
of course.
Well, if you want me to sell it, I need to go experience it. Well, yeah, but if you've never been on the partner side of it, where they've got, 40, 50 people a month are saying, well, I'm a travel agent.
Right.
Here's my email address is marytravels@gmail.com.
Exactly.
Can you please? And I need to bring my family, of course, because I want to see how you guys handle family. I've been on the supplier side of it as well. So
I hear funny stories. I have some suppliers that were very close, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe these things happen, but they do.
Well, and now we've got the influencer generation. I don't know if it's right to say the influence. We're in an age of the influence. And there's kind of the same thing there. It's like, I'm an influencer, so you should let me come stay at your resort, your hotel, take me on a tour. And it's kind of interesting to watch the landscape around that.
Yeah. And as travel advisors, I was talking to one of the suppliers at some point, we are influencers as well. I mean, we have social media, and a serious influencer with an insane amount of following. I mean, it's advertising, and I actually see a lot of opportunities. I'll never be that type of influencer. I'm just influencing through my work, but it's like at any job. There are many influencers, but if you have 500 followers, no one is going to give you this free villa stay, for the night. So it's same here. If your sales are non-existent, you're not a travel advisor.
It's gotta be a win-win for both sides for sure. So yeah, absolutely. So anything in particular that comes to mind when you kind of think about as you started your business? Well, when did you meet your current husband? Is it okay to say current husband? I don't want.
Yes, of course. My forever husband.
Sorry, thank you. That's why I'm divorced twice. I'm not very savvy to how you refer to your spouse. I used to call my second ex-wife. I used to say, "Oh, this is my second wife," and she'd look at me like, What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
Anyway,
it can definitely come out a wrong way. And when you don't mean it, it's
I
just like,
never
oh,
meant it
wow.
that way. Yeah, I just was trying to
Yeah,
explain, why I had two kids that were quite a few years apart. That's all I was trying to do. But anyway,
that's
so
funny.
you met him as you.
10 years ago,
Okay, so while you were still working
while
for
I
the
was going through
logistics
my
company.
midlife crisis, I added a
Okay.
new relationship.
Well, we don't want to go into all the details and the timing. I don't need to know all
There
that.
wasn't enough drama already.
Be careful. He might listen to this. But anyway,
Right.
okay. So what did he think when you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to transition into being a travel advisor and working in the travel business? I mean, maybe it was too early for him to have an opinion, but I'm just curious, how did that?
So Adam has always been very supportive in anything I do, and I'm very strong-minded. I don't know if I come off that way when I speak,
We talked about boundaries earlier, so that's usually an
right?
indication you're strong-minded. Yeah.
So, I do what I want in a good way. Like if my, eyes are set on opening and starting my own business, I'm pretty determined, unless it's negatively impacting, family or lifestyle, something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But he's always been very, very supportive. I think neither one of us knew what it's going to look like. Like I said, at first it was more about like side gig fun project to see
Mm-hmm.
if this is even a thing. I really was just playing with an idea, like I said, for the first year or so. But I think he, sees how happy I am with my lifestyle. He's also left a corporate job and has been working for himself for 5 years. So we both have been kind of running our own shows. I think we understand each other because our personalities and work needs are similar in terms of kind of that freedom
Right.
to our own projects and ideas, and creativity, I think, is the biggest thing. Just creating different possibilities for other
Yeah.
people.
It's good when you have that kind of similar mindset. If you've got one
Yeah.
person that's really all about the perceived, I'm going to emphasize the word perceived security of working for a company.
Right.
And then you've got somebody else that's the entrepreneur type that's like, I don't ever want to work for somebody else. That can create some conflict. It can.
Right.
But I guess the other thing I got to ask you is, does he like to travel? Is he traveling with you? Is he excited? Did he ever say, when you started dabbling with this, did he ever look at you and say, oh, do we get free trips?
No, he didn't.
Because
He
that's what
did
I would
not.
ask if I met someone
That's
that was it.
funny.
But anyway,
No, he did not. It's funny because when we met, he's only been to Mexico and we were in our early 30s. So he did not travel much, and he didn't even have a passport because when he went to Mexico, they didn't need passports apparently. So when we started to travel together, and actually that's a really big thing for a couple. I recommend doing that before you decide to get married and go places together.
especially if you like to travel. If neither
Right.
one of you has
Yes.
it, but even then, you still can learn a lot, right?
Right. Right. So thankfully we travel really well together, and he loves the type of travel, that experiential type of travel that I appreciate. And we both are foodies, and we love history and culture and interacting with the locals and doing different things. He does not want to travel as much as I do, which I totally understand. I would not, it's not like
It's not normal.
normalcy. Yeah,
You're not normal, is what
I
I
am
hear.
not normal.
Yeah, I
He's
get it.
also traveling more than a normal person, but I'm the next level. So I bring him on fun trips. I let him choose. I'll, tell him about a trip. And obviously some trips I can't bring anyone. It's for advisors
Yeah.
only. But I know he loves like the Southeast Asia very much. So if anything pops up there, we're definitely going. He likes certain types of cruising, like the more culturally focused, quieter ships, premium, luxury type of service levels, more immersive into the destination, overnight stays and things like that. So I know what he likes and enjoys, and that's what I offer.
You started the conversation, but you recently suggested to couples that you go travel together before you decisions. And then I hear you a little bit later, well, I know what he likes, so I pick and choose. Like, I don't want him along on some of these trips, is what I heard you say.
Well, and you
Yeah.
learn through travel, and I think it's important to communicate. I don't expect him to like everything I like, but I think it's healthy to communicate. I don't want to be on a trip where we're up from 6 a.m. and going like, from point to point until 11 p.m. Like that's not enjoyable to him, and thankfully we match on many different types of travel. And that's where we choose to travel together. And some other trips just won't work for him.
I do have some experience with that, with traveling while I was more or less working, because you are. And maybe your partner is, they kind of need to, I guess, to understand that. But I guess the question is like, is that an issue when you're there to work? You need to go see these things. You can't just say, I think I'm going to take the afternoon off and skip the culinary tour of Venice or whatever, because that's all been set up for you, that type of thing. And I think sometimes it can make it not so much fun for a partner that just expects, hey, we're on vacation.
Exactly. Those are the trips where that's an immediate, I won't even invite, I'll tell him I'm going there and whatever. But it's an intense itinerary geared towards advisors. And, it's just not fair to you because I won't be available, or I have to do these certain things and it's too much for you. And he's completely fine with that.
And there's also the kind of the scenario where like we had a young child when I was married and I was traveling a lot. So she wasn't really able to go with me anyway, but it was, what I remember is I go to New Zealand for 3 weeks and I am working, or I'm leading a trip to Brazil, or I'm doing whatever. You get very little sympathy from your partner when you get home. And it's like, you get home and they're like, okay, I've been stressed out managing everything with the kid, the dog, the cat, and she's working. And thank goodness you're home. And here, you take over all this stuff. I need some time off. And I'm like, I've been working my butt off. And she's like, yeah, right.
The time zone.
Yeah, and it's just, I never got any sympathy. If I said, man, I'm working long hours on this trip, I never got any sympathy. I don't know why.
I think people don't realize that naturally travel is fun, right? But when we go on, like even FAMs, for advisors to get familiar with a destination or a certain product, there is no mercy on these trips. You fly for 12 hours, let's say you land, you're jet lagged, and you're going.
Yeah.
Here is a castle, here is dinner, now watch this dance. You're barely functioning. Then, you have the jet lag, like I said, and it is a marathon, and most people don't know that because they haven't been on one. But if you talk to another advisor, and it's an immediate sympathy because you're just like, yeah, these are no joke, and especially if it's free, they're going to pack, as much as they can to help you see things. And when you sign up, you have to be ready for that. And I would never, ever invite my husband on anything like that. I think most normal people would never enjoy that. It's very intense.
They wouldn't. And because you're literally on all the time, you're not just trying to make sure get on the bus at the right time or meet the transfer driver or whatever.
The social aspect too.
It's every single person you meet, whether it's another advisor or whether it's a transfer driver, a guide, hotel manager,
right?
Everybody you meet, you gotta have your game face on, because they are accommodating you. You don't want your transfer driver going back, yeah, that one over there, she's a pain in the butt, and then because it's such a thing. Or if there's, of course, we discussed earlier, if you've got clients there, it's you're constant, I don't want to say
and then you get to your room.
Yeah,
you're on your A game, and you have to be. But then you go to your room when everyone goes to sleep. You have emails waiting for you, and clients, and so those are tough. And it really, truly, no one realizes how hard it is until they, it looks fun on social media. Oh, here I am on a great wall. Here I am eating noodles. And of course it's fun.
Isn't that the interesting thing too? Because we do post photos of being on the Great Wall eating noodles because we do want people to perceive as, look at all these fun, cool places I can help you go.
Well, and they are fun because you're not going to do it at that level at that pace.
Yeah.
My clients will never travel at that pace. What I do in 8 days, they would do in like 17 days. So it is fun at a normal pace, leisurely, vacation type of pace.
Because like you said, you might do 30 different events, visit, 15 different hotels, do all this stuff. So
Exactly.
just so that you can help them pick maybe four of those things out of the 30 that you, but anyway, yeah, people that are advisors that worked in the business are probably resonating with what we're saying. Everybody else like, oh, wah, 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 poor you.
Right, right.
So sorry for you. And I get that. I get that. It is a great job. It
Of course.
it is better than sitting on a factory line somewhere, unless that's what you like. I mean, yeah, so there's benefits, but
it's very fulfilling, and I think that's the key, and that's what I was, joking about my midlife crisis. I think it was just, how do I live a fulfilling life? And if, it's a job at a corporate for someone that's awesome, for me, it was something different, and I had to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've been chatting for a while, and I want to be respectful of your time, and I also want to make sure we didn't miss anything. So tell me, what do you wish I would have asked you? What do you feel like I forgot to ask you? Or just in general, what do you want to share with our audience before we wrap up?
Sure. It's hard, especially when the conversation flows easily like it is for us.
Nice.
We could probably record 3 more hours, because life is interesting and colorful, and you have, so many things happen and so many people in your life. We barely touched my husband, barely touched my kids, and all the personal stuff. Of course, the podcast is about the travel industry and how we truly change or impact lives through travel.
Yes, but this is also about you. That's why we're here. And I'm serious. I want to hear your story, because I'm fascinated. There's a reason I ask, like, does your husband like to travel? Like, how did you meet him? Were you already in travel? Because it's these personal connections. It's not just the connections with our clients. It's not just the connections with our vendors. It's just people that do this are just always interesting. And it's, and I told many people, it's like we're just sitting around at a table at a lodge or on a luxury small ship cruise or something. And it's just the questions like, how'd you get in this? So, so what do you want to share? Yeah. Tell us about your kids. Do they like traveling?
Yes, they love traveling, and they like that, like I call that experiential travel, to experience things. They get really bored at the beach, and it's, I'm not against island travel, island life. There's a way to set it up, and actually can quickly bring an example. I had a couple in January celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary, and they wanted an authentic experience in the Caribbean. And when you think about the Caribbean, you're thinking all inclusive, loud music, drunk people at the pool, loud water parks. That's what, just like people talk about cruises, again, mega ships, casinos, shows. It doesn't have to be this way, that you don't have to go on a large scale. And so Dominica was one of the island we looked at. One of my favorites, actually. It's like a Hawaii in the Caribbean. I don't know if you've ever been. It's just the most beautiful.
So it's Dominica?
Yes, not Dominican Republic. Exactly. And my accent might butcher the correct pronunciation. But the resort they stayed at was this eco-luxury setup with serenity, gold sounds every morning, your private pool, the hiking and the hot springs, and just like this pure joy that you don't think exists this close to home. So I think finding, not kind of just generalizing, just like Europe is so busy, or everyone is mean in Lithuania, or because you don't smile. Just, you don't generalize, you should stay away from generalizing things. And I think, so with my kids, we go to places like this, and when I say they're bored at the beach, we have a beach here 30 minutes away from home. We're very lucky. We just like to experience things through travel. Our days are not packed, but they're eventful. We'll have things happening each day. There's a routine. We go out, we see things, we learn things, we try things. We interact with the locals. When my son was turned 10, I asked him, let's do a big trip for your birthday. Would you like to go to Disney, or would you like to go to Germany for Christmas markets? And my family will meet us, choose one. And he chose Germany. And I was just like, cool. Yes,
Why do you, I'll tell you though, there's probably a lot of 10-year-olds out there that have been to Cancun 6 times or Hawaii 3 times, and nothing against necessarily Cancun or Hawaii. But
Right, of course.
I'm just trying to set the stage, like the resort beach hotels. And they've gone, once or twice a year their whole life, and that's just what they grew up with. And if you ask them where you want to go next time, and they may say they want to go to Florida, I don't know, the Keys or whatever. But your kids are different. So do you think what's the key? Like, what did you do right? Or was it just, you just think it's genetic? What do you think the difference is, why your kids are different than other kids? And you're different than other people. So maybe that's it. What do you think?
I think a lot of it is a lifestyle as well. Like, things you do on weekends. Like I said, we were being tourists in our own country with not much to tour at the time, when I was a kid. But the mindset is you're going to explore on weekends, or you're exploring during your vacation, and I think through that mindset, you then crave it when you're traveling. What are we going to do today? What are we going to see today? Of course, working in relaxation, few relaxing days, and we do this very often. I'll have, and I don't want to keep bringing up Italy, but we'll have an intense week of doing things, and then 4 days on Amalfi Coast, relaxing, eating, reading. I think it's important to bring that balance to travel and not to crowd your itinerary like what we do for work, because it's not enjoyable for a vacation. So I think when we raise our kids, we just have to ask ourselves, do we want them to be curious? Do we want them to see different, contrast in cultures? Other cultures live very differently, and it brings a different perspective. And especially when you go into teenage years and seeing certain things, I think it's impactful, and how you appreciate your own life and things that you want to do in the future. So I really think it's a lifestyle choice, and some families are, like you said, we're all are different, and others maybe are not interested in leaving the States or leaving the Caribbean region, and this is just a different type of traveler.
And I joked about genetics. I don't think it's genetic, but I think you're right. I think in the sense that if you're sitting, if you're, a kid sitting around and mom or dad is talking about, oh, can't wait to go to the Bahamas, or, oh, I wish that we could, go to Disney, or if that's what they're hearing all the time, that's what they aspire to.
Right.
If they've got a mom like you that just got back from Vietnam or China or wherever, right, and is saying, oh, I'm really excited about this or that, and they just kind of pick up on it.
Right.
But it's just travel. It's everything in life. It's how do we approach other people, strangers, family, friends, how do we talk to each other? How do we behave? And it just kind of makes sense. So it just sounds like just be a role model, right? I don't know. Yes,
and there is some genetics. I'm not an expert in that. I'm sure, still you have the genes in there. But overall, I've always taught my kids to also be brave and be bold, and I think when you travel the world, you definitely become braver, each time you leave the country and put yourself out of your comfort zone and figure things out, approach other cultures.
Their mom moved from Eastern Europe to the United States and in a new culture, and they weren't there to see it at the time, but I think those things are powerful messages. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that.
Right.
Maybe, if situations were different, you wouldn't have wanted to do that. But I've noticed, I lived in Arizona for quite a while. Arizona, I'm nothing bad about Arizona, but what I will say about Arizona is most people there didn't grow up there. They weren't born there. Mm-hmm. So you get a lot of people that move in, and one thing I noticed about Arizona, and I'll contrast this with Vermont here in a minute, but in Arizona, most of the people moved there. They made a big move. They left their family. They grew up for generations in West Virginia or New York or something like that, and they moved to Arizona. So what I just noticed was the people in Arizona are actually super friendly, generally more curious. And there's just something about somebody that can pick up and leave their home.
Right.
And it just brings a different energy, different interaction. Whereas like when I lived in Vermont, beautiful place, very beautiful place. But 90% of the people live in Vermont, or at least the area I was in Vermont, were, 8 or 9 generations in. Great people, but not super into adventure or curiosity or travel. A lot of them had never left Vermont, and it's, their parents never left Vermont, and their parents never left Vermont.
And it's exposure. Yes, and like
Yeah.
I said that lifestyle, it's exposure, and when kids are on the plane when they're 3 years old and on, you're exposed to these things, and it becomes normal to leave,
It's just,
to go places.
yeah. Yep. Very,
Yeah.
very cool. Anything else we should touch on?
I think, thank you, for providing the space for everyone to share their story. I love what you're doing.
Thank
You're
you.
very, fun to talk to. And like I said, I could probably speak for 2 more hours here, but I think, the message maybe to leave, and I say this to everyone, just being brave and going after things that you want in life, because life is going to end. It is short. Every day should be exciting if possible, if we have the opportunities. And in the States, we do have that opportunity. And, to create the life that is great.
Very inspiring. And thank you so much for sharing so much of your story and so much time with us.
Yeah.
Your
I
kind
hope you
words.
find it interesting.
No, it's that's why we're still talking. I'm sure some of our regulars and listeners will be like, "Oh, this is kind of a long episode." But I guarantee that it's
fun.
just it's a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for doing it, and we'll
Thank
come back
you.
and do another couple hours at another time. We can discuss, because I know
Sounds
there's
great.
more in there.
I hope we meet in person one day. I'll have to fly to Colombia for a beer with you.
Well, I do spend a lot of time here, but I travel quite a bit as well. So we'll just have to align our schedules and meet somewhere.
Destinations.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Aiste, thank you so much. Appreciate you for joining us, and we'll chat with you soon.
Thank you. Thank you
All
so
right,
much, Jason.
Thanks. Bye-bye. I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.